You wake up every morning, look into the mirror, and the first thing you see, do you recognize that person? Do you smile at them, or do you immediately begin listing everything that's wrong? Somewhere along the way, we've been taught to be kind to others, to forgive, to uplift. But no one ever taught us how to offer the same to ourselves. We carry our scars like shame, not as stories of survival. We constantly pour love into everyone else's cup and forget our own stands empty. You cannot bloom while constantly watering others and leaving your own roots dry. Self-love is not a luxury. It is not a reward you earn after being perfect. It's a necessity, a beginning, a voice that says, I matter too. But why is it that when we try to love ourselves, we feel guilty? As if choosing ourselves is selfish, it's not. It's survival. We teach people how to treat us by how we treat ourselves. If we ignore our pain, they will too. If we silence our voice, the world won't lean in to hear it either. You are not too much. You are not too broken. You are not a burden. You are human, and that alone is enough to deserve tenderness, care, and patience. Self-love begins with self-acceptance, not perfection. This simple truth is often the hardest to live by, especially in a world that constantly tells us we must be more, do more, look better, and achieve higher. From a young age, we're conditioned to believe that we'll be worthy only when we lose the weight, when we get the job, when we fix our flaws, when we finally become what the world celebrates. But in chasing perfection, we often abandon who we really are. We edit ourselves to fit molds we were never meant to fill. We silence our truths because they don't sound like everyone else's. We bury our real selves under layers of expectations, constantly trying to earn a love that should have never required effort. There is a kind of peace that comes not from changing who you are, but from choosing to sit with yourself exactly as you are, not to judge, not to criticize, not to fix, but to understand. That is the starting point of self-love. Not a destination you reach after becoming flawless, but a gentle, ongoing choice to say, even if I'm still growing, I am still enough. The truth is, waiting to love yourself until you become perfect is like refusing to water a plant until it blooms. Love is not the reward at the end of the journey. It is the nourishment that fuels it. People often confuse self-acceptance with giving up. They think if you accept yourself, you'll stop trying to grow. But acceptance is not about settling. It's about recognizing your worth before you change anything. It's about saying, I am human, I have flaws, I have wounds, and still, I am worthy of love. That kind of acceptance becomes the safest foundation for growth. It removes the fear that we must earn love, and instead teaches us that we can grow because we are loved, not to be loved. So many of us look at our reflections and only see what we think needs fixing. We count our failures, our insecurities, our mistakes, and we measure our value based on how closely we resemble someone else's idea of perfection. But you don't heal by hating yourself into someone better. You heal by forgiving yourself for not knowing better, by being patient while you learn, by holding yourself gently through the mess. When we stop demanding perfection from ourselves, we finally make space for truth. The truth that we're allowed to rest, to struggle, to change our minds, to feel deeply. That we're allowed to be inconsistent, to have bad days, to outgrow people and places. That we can be both a masterpiece and a work in progress. That we don't owe the world a polished version of ourselves. We owe it our authentic presence. Self-acceptance also means no longer abandoning yourself just to be accepted by others. It means recognizing when you're shrinking to make someone else comfortable, when you're pretending to be fine just to avoid disappointing others. It means standing with yourself when no one else claps, trusting your voice even when it's shaky, choosing your peace even if it means letting go of what once felt safe. It's about learning to belong deeply to yourself first, so you're no longer lost trying to belong everywhere else. The journey to self-love isn't linear. There will be days when you feel like you've made progress, and others when the weight of old insecurities pulls you back. That's normal. Healing is not about being strong all the time. It's about showing up for yourself even when you're not. It's in the small, quiet decisions, choosing rest over burnout, choosing honesty over hiding, choosing softness in a world that tells you to be hard. Self-love begins to grow when you start talking to yourself with kindness. Not the kind of kindness that pretends everything is perfect, but the kind that says, even if today was hard, I still deserve compassion. It's in the way you stop apologizing for existing, in the way you stop comparing your timeline to everyone else's, in the way you start recognizing that your worth was never tied to productivity, appearance, or praise. It's in the way you start choosing yourself, not because the world tells you you're finally enough, but because you know you always were. You cannot pour from an empty cup, prioritize your well-being. We've heard this phrase countless times, yet many of us still live as though we are the exception. We run ourselves to exhaustion, give more than we have, smile when we're breaking, and keep saying yes when everything in us is begging for rest. Somewhere, we learn that our worth is tied to how much we give, how much we serve, how much we sacrifice. We believe that to be strong means to never stop, to keep pushing, to never ask for help. But strength is not in running ourselves into the ground. Real strength is knowing when to pause, when to step back, when to say, I need to take care of me now. There is no award for self-neglect, no medal for burnout, no recognition for staying up all night, solving everyone else's problems while ignoring your own. And yet, many of us keep doing it, because we're afraid that if we stop showing up for others, we'll be seen as selfish, unreliable, or unworthy. We've been taught to associate our value with our usefulness, so the idea of rest feels like failure. But the truth is, when you don't take care of yourself, you eventually have nothing left to give. Not to your work, not to your family, not to your dreams. You are allowed to take up space in your own life. You are allowed to have needs, to have limits, to have moments where you pause and choose you. That doesn't make you selfish. It makes you human. Caring for yourself is not about isolating or abandoning others. It's about creating a solid foundation so you can truly show up without resentment, without exhaustion, without pretending. You cannot offer light to others if your own flame has burnt out. Self-care goes deeper than bubble baths and spa days. It's not about luxury. It's about necessity. It's waking up and choosing to speak gently to yourself. It's saying no when you mean no. It's setting boundaries that protect your energy, even when others don't understand. It's eating when you're hungry, resting when you're tired, crying when you need to release, and stepping away when something costs your peace. It's being honest about your mental and emotional state, even when the world expects you to keep smiling. It's recognizing that healing takes energy, and protecting that energy is your responsibility. So many people are walking around with empty cups, emotionally drained, spiritually exhausted, physically depleted, but still trying to give. Still trying to perform, still trying to be everything for everyone, and slowly they lose themselves. They forget what joy feels like, what it means to feel rested, to feel whole. They forget that it's okay to prioritize their own happiness without guilt. But you deserve more than survival. You deserve to thrive. You deserve to feel safe in your own presence. You deserve to live a life that feels good to you, not just one that looks good to others. Sometimes the most revolutionary act is choosing yourself in a world that constantly demands your self-sacrifice. It's realizing that people will adjust, that those who truly care about you will respect your need for space, for rest, for boundaries. And those who don't, well, their love was conditional anyway. When you begin to value your own well-being, you naturally begin to attract people who do the same. Your energy shifts. Your standards rise. You stop settling for less than you deserve because you finally decided you are worthy of more. There will be resistance. There will be moments when guilt creeps in, when old patterns resurface, when you're tempted to put everyone else first again. But healing is not about perfection. It's about intention. Every time you choose your well-being, even in small ways, you reclaim your power. You send a message to yourself that you matter, that your needs are valid. that your health, mental, emotional, and physical, is not negotiable. You are not here to be everything for everyone. You are not here to carry more than you can handle, to prove your strength by how much you endure. You are here to live fully, to love yourself fiercely, and to take care of the one person you will be with for the rest of your life, yourself. When you are well, you give from abundance, not depletion. You become more present, more patient, more compassionate. Not because you're forcing it, but because you are nourished. Because you are no longer giving from a place of emptiness, but from a place of overflow. Speak to yourself the way you speak to those you love. It's a simple shift, but one that can completely transform how you experience life. Most of us are so kind to others. We comfort our friends when they're struggling. We lift them up when they fall. We remind them of their worth when they forget it. But when it comes to ourselves, the voice we use is often harsh, critical, and unforgiving. We speak to ourselves in ways we would never dare speak to another person. We pick apart our reflection, question our every decision, blame ourselves for things we couldn't control, and call ourselves names we wouldn't say to a stranger. That voice inside your head becomes the environment you live in. If it's filled with judgment, you will shrink. If it's filled with compassion, you will grow. The way you speak to yourself sets the tone for how you treat yourself, and over time, it shapes the way you live. If you're constantly telling yourself that you're not good enough, you'll start believing it. You'll stop trying. You'll stop dreaming. You'll settle. But if you begin to speak to yourself with understanding, with patience, with love, everything begins to change. Not instantly, not perfectly, but gradually, and that gradual change is where the real healing begins. Self-talk is one of the most powerful forces that exists, and yet it often goes unnoticed because it's so internal. But just because no one else hears, it doesn't mean it doesn't have an impact. In fact, the words you whisper to yourself in private often matter more than the words spoken in public. They are the words that stay with you in silence, that echo when you're alone, that influence the choices you make when no one's watching. We often think motivation comes from pushing ourselves harder, being strict, holding ourselves to impossible standards. But true motivation grows in an environment of support. Think of how you'd encourage a friend who feels like giving up. You wouldn't tell them they're lazy or worthless. You'd tell them they're doing the best they can, that it's okay to rest, that they're still worthy even in their low moment. That's the kind of voice you deserve to hear from yourself too. Learning to speak kindly to yourself doesn't mean ignoring your flaws or pretending everything is fine. It means holding space for your imperfections without shame. It means saying, yes, I made a mistake, but that doesn't make me a failure. It means understanding that growth takes time and that being gentle doesn't mean being weak, it means being wise. It's knowing that criticism rarely creates change, but compassion often does. For many of us, this shift in self-talk is not easy. It requires unlearning years of internalized criticism. It requires awareness. You start by catching the negative thoughts. When that inner voice says, you'll never be good enough, pause. Ask yourself, would I say this to someone I love? If the answer is no, then don't say it to yourself either. Replace it with something softer, something that brings you back to reality, not into self-hatred. You don't have to lie to yourself. You just have to be fair. The language you use with yourself also teaches others how to speak to you. If you constantly put yourself down, others may follow that lead. But when you respect yourself, speak with confidence and care, and treat yourself like someone who matters, it sets a boundary. It says, this is how I expect to be treated. There is strength in softness. There is courage in vulnerability. When you begin to talk to yourself with the same love and grace you offer others, you begin to rebuild trust within. You create safety in your own mind. You begin to feel less like a battlefield and more like a home. And when you feel safe within yourself, you stop needing validation from the outside. You stop chasing approval. You stop proving. You start being. Speaking kindly to yourself doesn't mean you'll never have bad days, never feel insecure, or never question yourself. But it means that in those moments, instead of tearing yourself down further, you become your own support system. You become the voice that says, "It's okay, I've got you, we'll get through this." That's the kind of relationship you deserve with yourself. One built not on fear, but on love, not on perfection, but on presence, not on pressure, but on patience. Boundaries are not walls, they are bridges to healthier relationships. For so long, many of us have misunderstood what boundaries really are. We've been taught that saying no is rude, that protecting our time is selfish, and that prioritizing our peace somehow makes us cold or uncaring. And so we keep stretching ourselves thin, showing up even when we're burnt out, agreeing when we want to say no, giving access to people who have done nothing to earn it. But the truth is, boundaries are not about pushing people away. They are about inviting the right people closer in a way that's respectful, balanced, and safe. When you set a boundary, you're not rejecting others. You're honoring yourself. You're saying, "This is what I need in order to stay grounded, in order to protect my mental and emotional health." It's not about punishing others. It's about choosing peace over people. Pleasing, because the reality is, if you don't protect your energy, no one else will. People will take as much as you're willing to give, not because they're inherently unkind, but because you haven't shown them where the line is. And when that line is blurry, resentment builds. You begin to feel invisible, used, unheard. But boundaries bring clarity. They help you define what's okay and what's not okay, both for yourself and the people around you. Healthy boundaries are rooted in self-respect. They come from understanding your worth and believing that your needs matter. They sound like, "I'm not available for that right now," or "I care about you, but I can't take this on," or even, "That behavior isn't okay with me." And yes, it can feel uncomfortable at first, especially if you're someone who's spent years putting others first. Especially if you're afraid of being misunderstood, judged, or abandoned. But discomfort is not a reason to abandon yourself. In fact, that discomfort is often a sign that you're doing something new, something necessary. It's important to understand that boundaries are not ultimatums. They're not threats or demands. They're simply clear expressions of what you need in order to feel safe and respected. And the people who truly value you will not be offended by your boundaries. They will appreciate your honesty. They will adjust. They will meet you with the same level of consideration you offer them. And those who don't, their resistance says more about them than it does about you. If someone gets angry when you set a boundary, it's likely because they benefited from your lack of one. Boundaries also teach you about yourself. They help you identify what drains you, what energizes you, what feels right, and what feels wrong. They allow you to show up more authentically in relationships because you're no longer pretending to be okay with things that hurt you. You stop saying yes out of fear and start saying no out of self-trust. You begin to value quality over quantity in your connections. Fewer people, but deeper, more honest, more mutual. And just as you set boundaries with others, you must also set them with yourself. That means knowing when to step away from the screen, when to stop overworking, when to stop replaying the past, when to stop tolerating your own negative self-talk. Boundaries are an act of inner leadership. They help you stay aligned with your goals, your values, your growth. They protect you from your own patterns of self-sabotage, because sometimes the person you need to say no to the most is the one in the mirror. It's also important to understand that boundaries aren't about control. They are about responsibility. You're not trying to force others to change. You're simply deciding what you will and won't accept in your space. You can't control someone's behavior, but you can control your response. You can decide to walk away, to protect your peace, to stop explaining yourself over and over to people committed to misunderstanding you. You can release the guilt. You can honor your truth even if it makes others uncomfortable. Boundaries don't mean you love people less. They mean you love yourself enough to not disappear in the process of loving others. They allow you to give from a place of abundance rather than depletion. They help relationships thrive because they are built on mutual respect, not silent expectations or hidden resentments. They are acts of courage, of clarity, of self-responsibility. And while setting them may sometimes lead to uncomfortable conversations, the alternative, living without them, is far more costly, because every time you betray your own needs to keep the peace, you create a war within yourself. Your scars are symbols of strength, not shame. Every mark, every wound, every painful memory that left an imprint on your heart is not something to be hidden or erased. They are proof that you lived through something that could have broken you, but didn't. They are reminders of the battles you faced, not because you chose them, but because life put them in your path. And yet, you stood back up. You continued. You carried on, even when the weight felt unbearable. That in itself is a quiet kind of courage that doesn't always get recognized, but deserves to be honored. Too often, we're taught to hide our scars, to cover them with silence, to pretend they don't exist, to show only the polished version of ourselves to the world. We're made to believe that vulnerability is weakness, that admitting pain is admitting failure. So we carry our stories in secret, behind smiles that don't always reach our eyes, behind conversations that avoid the truth. But pretending to be untouched by life doesn't make you strong. It makes you disconnected. True strength lies in saying, yes, this happened, yes, it hurt, and yet I'm still here. Scars don't only exist on the skin. Emotional scars are often the deepest, the ones we carry for years, the ones that shape the way we trust, love, and see ourselves. And just like physical wounds, they need time, care, and attention to heal. Ignoring them doesn't make them disappear. Denying them doesn't lessen their impact. Healing begins the moment we allow ourselves to feel without judgment, to acknowledge what hurt without minimizing it, to tell ourselves it mattered. What I went through mattered. There's a kind of beauty that comes from being broken and rebuilding yourself piece by piece. A beauty that doesn't shine the way perfection does, but glows with authenticity. When we allow ourselves to be real about our pain, we invite others to do the same. We create space for genuine connection, not surface-level approval, but heart-to-heart understanding. And in that space, shame begins to lose its power, because shame thrives in silence, but it cannot survive truth. Wearing your scars with pride is not about romanticizing struggle. It's about refusing to let struggle define your worth. It's about knowing that what you've been through has shaped you, but it doesn't limit you. You are not your trauma. You are the strength that grew from it. You are the softness that remained despite it. You are the hope that kept flickering even in the darkest nights, and that is something to be proud of, not ashamed of. Some of the most powerful people are not the ones who have had it easy. They are the ones who have been tested, torn apart, and still chose to rebuild. They are the ones who didn't let bitterness take root, who continued to believe in love, in kindness, in the possibility of something better. That kind of resilience doesn't come from pretending life is perfect. It comes from living through its imperfections and choosing to grow anyway. There will always be people who don't understand your journey. People who will judge your past without knowing the full story, but their understanding is not a requirement for your healing. You don't need to explain your scars to anyone. You don't owe the world an edited version of your story. What matters is that you know your truth, that you honor your process, that you give yourself permission to be both hurt and healing, both struggling and strong. Scars can be reminders not of pain, but of growth. They remind you of who you used to be and how far you've come. They remind you that pain did not destroy you, that you had the courage to keep going, that your story didn't end in the chapter where everything fell apart. Every scar tells a story of survival, of lessons learned, of strength earned the hard way, and that is nothing to be ashamed of. There is quiet bravery in showing up each day with wounds that are still healing. In being kind despite the hurt, in choosing love over fear, in allowing yourself to feel joy again after knowing deep sorrow. That is what makes you strong. Not perfection, but persistence. Not flawless skin, but a resilient spirit. Not a life untouched by pain, but a life transformed by it. Choosing yourself is not selfish. It's necessary for healing. We are raised in a world that constantly celebrates self-sacrifice, applauds people for putting others first, and romanticizes the idea of being the one who always shows up, even when it costs us our well-being, our peace, our identity. Somewhere along the way, many of us learned that to be loved, we must earn it. That saying yes, even when we want to say no, makes us good. That being available for everyone but ourselves is noble. And so we keep giving, keep fixing, keep carrying burdens that were never ours to hold. We neglect ourselves quietly, even proudly, without realizing the damage it does to our spirit. But healing begins the moment you choose yourself, the moment you say, I matter too. The moment you stop waiting for permission to take care of your needs. Choosing yourself doesn't mean you don't care about others. It means you've realized that your care must include you. It means recognizing that your worth is not measured by how much you endure or how many pieces of yourself you give away. It means understanding that being whole is not selfish. It's essential. There comes a point when you have to pause and ask, when did I stop being on my own list? You plan everyone else's joy, listen to everyone else's pain, meet everyone else's needs. But when was the last time you checked in with your own heart? Choosing yourself is about returning to that heart. It's about listening to the part of you that has been whispering for attention, for rest, for love. It's about honoring your own voice, even when it's been silenced for too long by the noise of obligation and guilt. Many people fear choosing themselves because they worry it will disappoint others. They fear being seen as selfish, distant, or unkind. But you are not responsible for managing everyone's expectation. You are responsible for managing your own alignment, your own truth. If something costs your peace repeatedly, it is too expensive. And if choosing yourself offends someone, it likely means they benefited from you not choosing yourself before. Healing isn't loud. It's not always about grand declarations or dramatic shifts. Sometimes it's in the quiet decision to walk away from what hurts. Sometimes it's in saying no without explanation. Sometimes it's in staying in on a night you feel emotionally tired, or turning your phone off just to hear yourself think. It's in protecting your energy like it's sacred, because it is. Choosing yourself means allowing yourself the space to feel, to grow, to recover, to become. It's about realizing that burnout is not a badge of honor, and that peace is not a luxury. It's your right. The relationships that are meant for you will not fall apart because you chose yourself. The right people will not make you feel guilty for needing space or time or boundaries. The ones who truly care for you will want you to be well, not just available. Choosing yourself filters out the noise. It reveals who supports your growth and who only benefits from your silence. You teach people how to treat you by how you treat yourself. If you consistently choose others while abandoning your own needs, you set a precedent that your needs don't matter. But when you begin to show up for yourself, to honor your boundaries, to speak your truth, you shift the dynamic. You begin to attract energy that respects your presence rather than expects your sacrifice. It takes courage to choose yourself, especially when you've spent years doing the opposite. But every time you choose yourself, you send a powerful message to your inner child, to your heart, to your soul. I am worthy of care. I am worthy of love that includes me. I am allowed to prioritize my own healing. You begin to rebuild trust within. You begin to feel safe in your own presence again. And that safety becomes the foundation of everything else, your relationships, your decisions, your dreams. You don't need to justify your healing. You don't need a reason to rest. You don't need to explain why you've stopped trying to save everyone at the cost of your own well-being. Choosing yourself is not abandonment of others. It's the beginning of coming home to yourself. It's reclaiming your power, your voice, your identity. It's the moment you realize that your life belongs to you, not to your past, not to your guilt, not to the versions of yourself you created just to survive. It belongs to the you who's ready to heal, to breathe, to be. Healing doesn't happen in a straight line. It's not something you wake up and complete like a checklist. It's messy, non-linear, often invisible to the outside world, and deeply personal. Some days you feel like you've conquered the mountain, and the next, you're back in the valley wondering if you've made any progress at all. That's the reality no one really prepares you for. That healing isn't always loud or visible. Sometimes it's silent. Sometimes it's just getting through the day without falling apart. Sometimes it's not reacting the way you used to. And sometimes it's simply choosing to keep going even when everything in you wants to stop. We often carry the belief that once we decide to heal, everything will feel lighter. But what we forget is that healing first brings to the surface everything that hasn't been dealt with. The pain we buried, the emotions we avoided, the truths we tried to ignore, they all come rising to the top. It's uncomfortable, it's overwhelming, it's tempting to run back to old patterns, old habits, old distractions, because growth asks for honesty, and honesty demands that we face ourselves in ways we've never dared to before. Healing asks you to sit with what hurt you, not to relive it, but to understand it, to look at the wound not with judgment, but with compassion, to stop asking yourself, what's wrong with me, and start asking, what happened to me? It's not about assigning blame, it's about reclaiming the narrative. Because when you understand where the pain began, you also begin to understand where it can end. And that awareness is the first real freedom. In the process of healing, you will lose people. Not because you've become bitter or distant, but because you've started choosing yourself. You've started setting boundaries, speaking up, saying no, no longer playing the role you once did in someone else's life. And for those who only loved the version of you that stayed silent, your growth will be uncomfortable. But that discomfort isn't your responsibility to fix. You are allowed to evolve. You are allowed to outgrow relationships, environments, even versions of yourself that kept you small. Healing also means unlearning the belief that love must be earned, that rest must be justified, that your emotions are too much, that your voice is too loud. It's about rewiring the way you speak to yourself and redefining the stories you've been told. You are not too broken to be whole again. You are not too far gone to return to yourself. You are not too late. Healing doesn't have a deadline. It unfolds in your own time, in your own way. Some days you will feel the ache more than others. A memory will sting. A song will pull tears from your eyes. A scent will bring it all back. And in those moments, you might question how far you've really come. But healing isn't about never feeling pain again. It's about not letting that pain control you anymore. It's about responding differently, loving yourself more fiercely, holding yourself through the storms rather than abandoning yourself in them. There is no perfect way to heal. No one size fits all. Some people heal through writing, some through therapy, some through art, through nature, through silence. What matters is not the method, but the commitment. To keep showing up for yourself, even when it's hard, even when it feels like nothing is changing. Every breath you take in pain and choose not to run from it, you're healing. Every time you speak your truth instead of swallowing it, you're healing. Every time you choose rest over burnout, peace over chaos, truth over denial, you are healing. The world may not applaud your healing journey. It may not recognize the quiet progress, the internal shifts, the strength it takes to get up and face another day with a heart that's still mending. But you will feel it. In the way you breathe easier, in the way you forgive yourself more gently, in the way you begin to feel safe inside your own skin again. Healing is not a final destination. It's a lifelong relationship with yourself, one built on trust, on love, on the constant choosing of growth over comfort, truth over fear, and compassion over self-judgment.